podcast. I am here with my co-host G-Dog. G-Dog, how are we today?
Loving being here with you, Angus.
And I'm here with a very, very exciting guest, Johnny Lye. Johnny, first question I have for you is, what made you start a supplements company in the first place?
Hello guys, thanks for having me on, firstly. Yeah, I think that the main thing which probably prompted me to supplement brand, to be honest, was that I wanted free supplements when I was at school, and I thought that there was a gap in the market for supplements, and that maybe brands hadn't caught on to the fact that the power of social media and the way in which people interact with brands nowadays is very different to how some of the biggest supplement brands have ran for years. You know, the likes of MyProtein and these kind of guys all are spread across hundreds or thousands of different products and haven't really given enough thought into how they're formulating, how they're delivering to the body, and then how they're marketing different types of compounds which have existed for so many years. So I saw an opportunity, and I didn't want to go to university is one of the main answers. So yeah, I thought, why not try it, see if I can make it work in a year. If not, then I can go to university. But yeah, here we are 2 years later.
And the first product you decided to choose was whey protein, but clear whey protein, am I right?
Clear whey, yes.
So can you explain to the audience who don't know the different types of protein, what is clear whey protein?
Okay, yeah. So clear whey protein is basically, in short, it's a protein which is much similar to like a squash rather than a milky, thick like protein powder. So clear whey is a hydrolyzed version of whey, which basically means that it's thinner, it doesn't have that thick consistency, it's also lower calorie, but with that comes a more expensive price. So I saw in the market, that there were maybe an opportunity that all of the limelight was being given to the whey protein isolates and the whey protein concentrates, and actually a lot of the products were starting to mix the both of these, but there wasn't the focus on clear whey that I thought was necessary, and also there were brands popping up in the US that were really focusing on this clear whey product and being super successful. So I think it was a mixture of things which prompted me for that first product to be the clear whey, and one of which was the product itself, one of which was the opportunity that I saw with the success, and third, then I really loved the product. Like, it was one which, when we were going through tasting trials and tests, it's something that I've always been very particular on, is that if we're going to release a product, or we're going to go down the rabbit hole of trying to develop a product and then ultimately bring it to market, it needs to be something which I am loving and taking every day. And that was the first product which I found which kind of fit that criteria, I think.
And obviously you've had a real variety of products since there as well.
Yeah.
So mushroom powder, was that another one?
Yes, yeah. So first of all was the clear whey, which was good. So the story with the clear whey is that it was the first product which I decided that we were actually going to go through and release after we had done tasting test trials. The first order of clear whey was 320 units. It was delivered on a pallet to my family home in Dorset, and it was an insanely cool day. But when it all arrived and got stacked up in my bedroom, I kind of looked at that 320 units and thought, how on earth am I going to sell all of this? Which is really funny now, because, you know, the orders which we're placing today are many times that. But that was the first product. It went decently well. There were a few things which were ingrained into the product's DNA, which I think made it hard to work as a business. The unit economics weren't quite there. It was hard to stand out against the competitors in the market because we weren't really that different, and the only sort of USP which I could really find was we're a small brand and we taste better than the competitors. So that was the first product, and I've gone on a massive tangent here, but I'm trying to take you through the journey. So the clear whey, it was cool, and we managed to sell through those 320 units in around about 3 weeks from release, because we had built some hype on social media and that kind of thing. And then I thought, okay, what's next? And I had seen that there was this trend that was growing in the UK. And again, I go back to what's been working in the US in general, I think, is probably going to work in the UK in around about 3 years' time. That's normally how these trends goes. and then in the further 2 years, then it's probably going to go off in Europe as a general rule of thumb. So there were a few brands, for example, a brand called Daily Dose, a brand called Mudwater, that were killing this mushroom coffee alternative in the US. And I thought, okay, let's see if we can make this product work. Again, we started off with a pretty small number. I think we started off with around 200 units. And that was much less successful than the protein. It was extremely, extremely hard to sell. The price point was higher. Even though the margins were great, then that meant the price point was higher, and we had real trouble marketing the product. And also then, because we had gone with the protein and released the protein, and people were seeing us as a gym and performance and athletic brand, and the mushroom coffee didn't really fit into that niche. It was more a lifestyle product. So I used to get questions of, is it mushroom protein, all of this kind of thing. And one thing which actually has cropped up now when we're looking at new products in the future is a product on brand? And looking back, then the mushrooms were definitely not on brand.
So how did you land on creatine gummies?
Creatine gummies. So following the release of the mushroom product, then again it's like, okay, I failed with that. I failed with the protein. What's next? So I came up with this idea for a product whereby a lot of people who I was speaking to were saying, okay, I take my creatine in the mornings, I combine it with electrolyte powder to make the creatine taste good. We've done a lot of sampling on creatine. Turns out that over 80% of people take unflavored creatine and mix it with something else. The thing which most people seemed to be taking with that was electrolyte powder, and looked on the market, and from what I'd learned with the previous things, I was thinking, okay, we need something innovative. We need something which people have never seen before, and therefore we always charge a much higher price point because they've never seen it before, and we're the ones who kind of own the category. So I came up with this product called Creatine, which initially, now you know as Creatine gummies, and this is the only product we sell, but Creatine to start off with was an unflavored powder blend. So it was 5 grams of creatine monohydrate. It was 800 milligrams of sodium, which actually turned out to be far too much because it meant that the powder's really, really salty. And then a couple of extra electrolytes in there, so some magnesium and some potassium. But from that product, then we got some really, really key learnings. We found that people, one, really, really liked the fact that creatine and electrolytes were being combined, and they were really enjoying the benefits they were finding using Creatine over standard creatine. But we also found that people didn't understand that the main electrolyte is sodium, and that means that the product was going to be salty. And therefore, then when they were mixing it in their drinks, then the salty taste was really quite unpleasant. So back to the drawing board again, we're like, okay, we've got the start of a winner, and we're doing really, really well at acquiring these customers. At this point, I think, so just timeline-wise, the protein was around February. The mushroom blend was then around July. This is 2023. The Creatine blend was then September 5th, I think, 2023. And by the end of the year, we had ended up selling about £30,000 worth of Creatine powder. So it wasn't a failure, and we knew that we could acquire the customers and get them through the door. But the problem was on the back end, no one was coming back and buying it again, which is the main, it's where all of the value is in a business like this. So again, back to the drawing board, and it's like, okay, how can we make this Creatine into a nice addition to someone's day? And I know I'm repeating myself again, but it's back to the US, brands which are starting to come through. There was a brand in the US which was selling creatine gummies, and I saw it and I was like, okay, that's it.
Now, before we go into that point onwards, I want to step back a little bit and talk about your personal story that got you to that point. So did you go to the gym regularly? Were you very sporty at school? How did you get to the point that you suddenly ended up launching this company? It's like a very uncommon story, and also you've been uncommonly successful. But what is your personal fitness story and history?
Yeah. So, I mean, my fitness story is probably very similar to a lot of people. I always loved playing sport when I was at school. I was always really, really interested. Football was my sport. Played all the way throughout school. When I was 16 and the lockdown, the COVID lockdown came, then I got the opportunity to play for a team called Yeovil Town, which was at the time they were in the National League. Now they're slightly lower since they've been demoted. But yeah, the Yeovil Town is a professional football team, and they were nearby where I lived. And I got the opportunity in the lockdown, because it was counted as semi-pro sport. Then I got the opportunity to, whilst everyone else was inside and having to be locked away, then we were still able to train 4 days a week and play matches against other teams on the weekend as well. So I played football at that level all the way through school, 16, 17, 18 for the under-18s. Got a couple of games where I sat on the bench, first team in the National League. So that's the 5th English League. But yeah, that was kind of my entry to the gym, because when you start playing football at that level, then something which comes with that is not only having proper, really dialed in nutrition, but also gym work, and a lot of it, and very regimented gym work with coaches that really, really know what they're talking about. So that was my gateway into the gym. And I think that since then, it's been a real like core part of what I've done, not just the gym, but fitness in general. But that was my gateway into the gym, and why I first started going.
And at that point, did you have, in the same way that pro footballers do have, your nutrition managed? Did you take supplements yourself then? What did you take? How did you manage your nutrition when you were playing football?
Yeah, so that was the first time that I had ever taken supplements when I first started playing football. The supplements which we took were creatine and protein powder, nothing more, nothing less. I think that in general, then me and my team joke about it, but there is a life cycle of what someone who is really focused on health and wellness and the gym and fitness goes through. Of you start off by taking no supplements, you then take every supplement under the sun, and then you end up by taking no supplements again. But I think that as a gateway in supplements, then it wasn't as such that I was doing my own research. It was very much that my first interaction with supplements was from people who really, really knew what they were talking about. So from there, then not only was my nutrition dialed in, and I saw the benefits of that, which I was incredibly lucky to have, and not many people have had the privilege of working with a really great nutritionist, but also then taking the right supplements at the right time and being educated on them rather than just taking what your friends are taking, which I think is probably the way that most people get into taking supplements in the first place.
Absolutely. And so then moving back to the actual development of the actual creatine gummies.
Okay.
If you're there as a school leaver and you're suddenly starting a manufacturing process for creatine gummies, I mean, where do you start? I mean, it's like making it in your garden. How do you define where you get the manufacturing?
Yeah. So, I mean, the short answer is you find people who are much cleverer than you in their industries and get them to do it well from the start. I think that because it was the 4th or 5th product iteration of the brand, and by this point we had a bit of cash in the bank, so we had a few credit lines available to us. We had raised a small amount of angel investment at that point. We had cash to go in and actually develop a product with a manufacturer, which, by the way, if you're going to place the order with a manufacturer, then many of them do the formulation of the product for free.
Really?
So, yeah. So it's a big thing. You normally pay a deposit of, if you want to develop a product, then you can place a deposit, and then if you end up placing the order with them for an X number of units, their minimum order, which is usually between 500 and 1,000 finished products, then they'll refund you that deposit.
So you'll say to them, I want to make a Clear Whey protein shake at the very beginning, the first thing you did before you got to the gummies. Mm-hmm. And the manufacturer will say, who are you?
Well, that was
this guy?
That was one of the biggest problems.
You're
to be
a kid.
Honest.
Come on.
I was 18. Yeah. So, I mean, to start off with, the way that I first made connections in the industry was by going to trade shows. So actually, like, showing up in person. You know, by that point, I had sent countless cold emails and tried to get on calls with these industry professionals, and they're like, you know, has the brand ever had a sale? And you're like, well, no. And how much budget do you have? And you're like, okay, well, you know, I'm trying to start off with like £1,500, and those conversations are really tricky. And I think that the main thing is just being relentless in your pursuit of trying to find that perfect fit. So for me, it came with a manufacturer who was also starting out and were really small and had no clients. So they were willing to take a flyer on a guy that had as much experience as them in the industry. So that was really tricky. And I definitely think that getting started well, I think most industries, but this industry in particular is by far the hardest bit, because I was talking with someone the other day about it, and it's like, now, because of the people I know and where the brand is and people that know about the brand, then it's like, if I want to create a new product, then straight away, then it's one phone call or it's one intro from someone that I know. And then it's getting on a call with people who are actually going to take you seriously. And it's them straight off the bat offering you payment terms for you to pay them 45 days after they've delivered the product to your warehouse, when I used to pay 100% 6 months before the product was delivered to me. So the getting started is the hard bit, but once you peel back the layers and go through the gears, then the whole process just has become much easier, like in that respect. But yeah, I mean, going back to the question, getting started was an insanely long process. I left school in July 2022 and it was February 2023 before I even released the first product. So it was a long journey, but
you obviously have this incredible amount of self-belief, which majority of people lack. What is it that you think you have which others don't?
I think I'm a massive optimist, and I think that probably in some situations then it does me wrong to be such an optimist. You know, I think that I always see good in people and see good in opportunities, and it's very rare that I'll see an opportunity and not at least try it and see where we can take it. And I think that reflects over to self-belief. I kind of have this unwavering feeling that whatever kind of happens, like everything's going to work itself out and end up, if you're willing to put the hours in and you're willing to be kind, and that's going to come back to you, then I think that the optimism kind of leads to the self-belief. And I think that in the industry of being an entrepreneur, then that is kind of a non-negotiable, because you don't have a boss who's going to tell you that you're doing great. You kind of have to back yourself and really, really push yourself across the line. And it's related, the fact that some people say to me, like, how do you get the drive to be your own boss and wake up at 7 a.m. every morning and go to the office at 7:30 and leave at 8 p.m. and do that every day? And I think that is the drive and the self-belief and the optimism that's needed in order to make it as someone who's self-employed, which obviously like has massive drawbacks, but also, you know, long term and also in the short term with freedom, like also has huge benefits.
And what was the structure of your day during that period? So you were living with your parents at the beginning. Right? How old were you when you moved out from your parents?
I was just about to turn 19.
Right. So you were living with your parents while you were starting a company. You had this drive and this optimism, determination. You get up at 7 a.m. Would you go to the gym? Would you go for a run? How would your day flow?
Yeah, so when I was living at home, then I think that my day looked very different to how my day looks now. And my day has always had a few different components, but the times in which I do things has very much changed. So I used to be someone that would always work out in the morning. I used to wake up and always either run or go to the gym. And also then there's a little bit of extra things in there. I did a triathlon early in the year, and that meant that I had to go to the pool every now and then and go on the bike. So there are a few different things which were always a core mechanism in the day. So working out was always one of them, a non-negotiable, whether that's in the gym for half an hour or whether that's going on a 2-hour run. It's been something which at max I'll take one day off a week. So that's always been a non-negotiable. And then it's just kind of been working throughout the day into the night and sprinkling in other activities at just completely random times. So oftentimes when I was at home, it was kind of wake up, work out, work all day with lunch in there, and then maybe go and see a friend at like 4:30 p.m, get back home at 6, and then back to work until 10. So I've always had the main components of a little bit of socializing and workout and work. But to be honest, like those things keep me super, super happy. And it's kind of all I do. Like there's never a moment where I'll just sit on the sofa and relax and watch Netflix. Like that's never really been part of what I've enjoyed doing or in my routine at all.
Out of interest, how have you dealt with negative feedback from peers? Because your mentality is exceptional and it is so different to so many others. What has kept you going? Because surely at times you might have been like, oh, maybe I am missing out on things like university.
Yeah, it's true. I think that to say that there was negativity from peers, like I wouldn't say that there's been...
Or just people you know.
No, because I think that in general, then there's this thing where everyone who's ever decided to go down a different path to university always says that, you know, everyone was telling me that I was an idiot for doing what I was doing and it was stupid and I shouldn't do it. Like, I personally never had that. Like, all of my friends and my family have always been like insanely supportive and really behind what I've been doing, which is obviously really, really lucky. But I think that there is sometimes that part of my brain where I'm like, okay, I could be at university now having no care in the world, or I could be going out every weekend and you know, doing all the things which people my age are doing. And like every now and then like I will do that. But in general, then I'm just more focused on the bigger picture, and I really, really get much more contentment by living a healthy life where I'm eating well and I'm exercising well and I feel like I'm progressing. That's where my ultimate happiness comes from at this point. And when people say, oh my God, like that's so different to what everyone else your age is doing, it's like, well, everyone's different. Like everyone has their own North Star which they're trying to work to. And some people are really, really happy in the here and now and just living life and going out and all this kind of thing. But for me, then what truly brings me happiness is moving forward and growing my business and growing my team and all this kind of thing. And ultimately then, like, if that's what makes me happy, then I'm just going to be really focused on that.
But there must have been moments where you'd had a setback, where you didn't have the sales you expected to have, something went wrong with the manufacturing process, you fell out with a supplier. And how did you deal with that? And how did you bounce back? And how did you maintain your optimism?
Oh yeah, there's been moments. I think that early on, then those moments seem much more real because it's much more of a make or break early on. It's like, if this thing doesn't go right, then what am I doing? Because there hasn't been any success yet of the business, and therefore then it could easily all come crashing down. Whereas once you hit a certain point, then you know that even if things are bad, you still are going to be here tomorrow. But in the early days, then yeah, there were some moments where we would have days where we had no sales and we would have invoices which were due and we didn't have money in the bank to pay them. And I think that, again, it goes back to that optimism thing of that I've always just believed that everything was going to work out okay, which is probably like really naive. And I say it on calls with people all the time. I think that I probably am naively optimistic, but thus far, then I think that it's been one of the things which has meant that it separates our brand, me and my team's brand, from others, just because we're willing to take risks and do things that others aren't, which then have massive, massive rewards. And that's one of the reasons why we've been able to grow as quickly as we can and take on the massive competitors in the industry as fast as we can, because we're just so much more agile and so much less risk adverse than everyone else is. Because I think that in general, then the UK as a market is much more risk adverse than maybe other markets. And if you aren't that, and you can find people who aren't that, then it can be a massive, massive unlock.
For the people who are listening to this, and they might not know what it is, but what is creatine first?
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Is it safe? I think that is something, particularly with the young audience, I'm sure will listen to this and will share it with their parents. Can you clear that one up? Definitely. I know we have in episodes, but it'd be good to hear it from you too. And can you talk us through the manufacturing process of the creatine gummies?
Yeah, sure. So creatine is a compound which is already in our bodies. It's one which we produce around 1 gram of naturally per day. It's found in some red meats and fish. So it's not something to be scared of because it's something that you already have in your body and are eating on a weekly basis. So first and foremost, is it safe? 100% it's safe. What does creatine actually do and why should you be taking it? Creatine is known as this muscle building supplement, which is only for bodybuilding men who look like Arnold and Chris Bumstead and all these guys.
A couple of other things they're taking.
Yeah, yeah. Creatine is definitely not that. Creatine is a compound which should be taken by 99% of the population. And actually then the stigma that creatine is only for young men is completely wrong. Creatine actually has out of all of the population, then the least proven benefits of creatine are actually on young men. The best benefits are on older women. And I think that it's something which we're going to see more and more being prescribed to middle age and older women, just because it has so many different effects on so many different things. So creatine isn't actually a muscle building supplement. It's a supplement which, first of all, gives you energy. So it means that you can work out for longer in the gym, you feel more energized during the day. And the way that you build muscle from that is that if you've got more energy, then you're able to push through that extra set, that extra rep, and you're able to go one further than maybe you wouldn't have been able to do if you were taking it. It also puts water into the muscles, which can make you, one, look more pumped up and bigger, but also look more toned. And there are also some studies which link creatine with cognitive function. So creatine is a nootropic. It has positive effects on the brain, especially to do with if you're sleep deprived. So there have been some studies, there have been over 500 studies on creatine, and there have been some studies which have linked creatine to cognitive performance when you're sleep deprived and cognitive performance in general. So there are a bunch of benefits of creatine across the board. It's the most researched and studied supplement, and it's one which everyone should be taking.
So what made you combine it with electrolytes?
So it was initially, then the reason why we combined it with electrolytes was because I had conversations with some friends and some customers of people were combining them. When diving into the data, then there were some studies. There haven't been enough studies on it yet, but there were some studies that suggested electrolytes improved the uptake of creatine. Now, in the same way that I would say that creatine definitely doesn't cause hair loss, because there's only been one study in 2005 that has never been replicated. I'm not going to go ahead and reference the study, the 5 studies which have said that creatine and electrolytes improve the uptake. But the reason why we combined them was that creatine and electrolytes work incredibly symbiotically. So creatine is really, really great for bringing water into the muscles, which is actually a really good thing for all the reasons I just mentioned. And electrolytes improve hydration of the body. So they work together in that way. And also then in terms of intracellular hydration, which is really, really great for wellness, but also really, really great for hypertrophy and muscle building, then there are 4 main things which improve intracellular hydration, one of which is creatine, one of which is electrolytes, and the other 2 are sugar and fruit juice. So those are the reasons why we ended up combining them. But as to whether they work well as a hybrid and whether they have a synergy, then the studies are yet to be like fully confirmed. But it is 2 compounds, which first and foremost, I think that everybody should be taking on a daily basis. So we thought, why not combine them both in a gummy rather than having a creatine gummy and having an electrolyte gummy?
And in terms of the actual manufacturing, so originally you were were you manufacturing in the UK or Holland, or where were you
Holland,
making it?
yeah. So originally we were manufacturing in Holland.
That's because a Dutch company was at a trade show you were at, or how did you get in contact with them?
Yeah. It was through one of the white label trade shows in Excel.
And these Dutch companies, I think you said to us before, they put normal pharmaceutical products, maybe for children or whatever, into these gummies, and that's where the idea came to put creatine in the gummies.
Yeah, so I mean, throughout the years, then there have always been these children's gummies, these children's multivitamin gummies, and there's also been gummies. A lot of gummies have been focused on pregnancy and menopause and all of this kind of thing, but there hadn't been anyone that had put creatine in a gummy but actually made it taste nice in the UK. So there were a couple of different options in the UK, mainly on Amazon, but they were all white label, which means that you find a product which has already been developed and slap your own label on it. And they were all just pretty disgusting for one, and pretty branded. So we saw an opportunity whereby we could make a product which genuinely tasted delicious and also combined both creatine and electrolytes, and was one where we were in charge of the formula and what went in the product and how it was tested and what kind of form it came in. And it didn't come in a little bottle with a label on it. It came in lovely packaging, which feels nice and looks nice. So the product is just the same as what had been done before, but with the addition of electrolytes and in a much better tasting, better looking form.
And then you found subsequently that you became too big for the Dutch company, or you started making it in China. So explain that.
Yeah. So that process was quite a long process. We spoke to pretty much every manufacturer in the UK and in Europe. And what we kept on coming back to was that, one, gummy manufacturing in the UK and Europe has only been done really in the last 2 or 3 years. So the technology in the UK and Europe just wasn't up to scratch. And for two, then the factories which did do it didn't have the capacity to be able to fulfill the number of units that we were trying to
Too big for Europe.
So like, I mean, for context, then most of our POs, but most of our purchase orders are for 100,000 plus bags of Creatine gummies. So when we're looking at turning around 100,000 bags, which is 9 million gummies in like 4 or 5 weeks, then you need a pretty big facility and capital machinery. So I spoke to a bunch of different manufacturers in the UK, and 2 or 3 of them were really transparent with me. They were like, look, we would love to do it. We don't have the capabilities, but where you do need to go is China, because they've been making nutraceutical gummies for 20, 25 years. And they have both the scale to produce what you're looking for, but also the real machinery and technical quality, which will make you stand out against anyone that's using any of the competitors in the UK or the EU.
Now, many people watching this podcast and probably listening will recognize your voice and your face from all the advertising and marketing you've done on social media. So could you give us an insight into how important social media has been for the development of your business and an idea of how you put ads together and do your marketing?
Yeah. So, I mean, social media has been the thing which is growing the business. You know, you can have the best products in the world, and you can have the nicest looking website in the world, and you can have the best experience, the best customer support agents, the best packaging. You can have the best everything. And if nobody sees it, then it's pointless, because you don't actually get to put the product in the hands of anyone. So I started off with the advertisements. I had always been really, really interested in video editing. And I had a friend who is now my flatmate who is even better at video editing than anyone who I've ever met. So he helped me a lot with a lot of the early ads. And since then I've hired a team, and the guy who heads up my marketing department, shout out James, he has been full-time since July, creating all the ads at just a ridiculous scale. And that all gets fed into the Meta machine, Instagram, Facebook, a little bit of TikTok ads, and we're producing, 50 plus videos a month, which are all going into the ads and spending, hundreds of thousands of pounds a month on putting these ads out to people.
And the ROI on that is obviously extremely successful.
It's good, yeah. It's interesting because as we've grown as a business, then there's a way in which ads work, and it's very obvious, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Like, as you spend more, then the ROI gets worse. So over time, then initially we were profitable on first purchase, but now we're working towards a model whereby we actually make a small loss on the first purchase. So we acquire a customer for more money than they're actually paying us on first purchase. And then because the product works so well and people love it so much and they come back and buy, then they pay themselves off on the back end when they get on subscription and they order twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So we're working towards a model there, but still the ROI on that is good, yeah.
There'll be a lot of people watching this and being inspired by you and thinking, wow, I want to work with Johnny. And so when you are looking for people to work with you, given your effervescent positivity, how do you prevent that positivity from being diluted by the people around you? Angus and I always talk about sort of, who's your hype man, who's your hype woman, who's the person that keeps you positive. When you're down, they bring you back up again, and just surround yourself with the best people. How do you do that?
Yeah, I think that first and foremost, I've been insanely lucky with the team that I've built today. Like, my team are the absolute best in class. Like, somehow managed to, the first hires that I've ever made have turned out to just be people that I absolutely love working with and who are just insanely good at their jobs. Like, I started this brand when I was 18 and I just finished school. I've never had a job. I've never had a boss. I have no idea how to manage people or how to hire people. And I tell them that every day. And they're all older than me. My youngest employee is 3 years older than me. So it's been a strange process for me and probably an even stranger process for them. But it is at the absolute heart of why we've been so successful over the last 6 months. I think that in many cases, then businesses hire for the sake of it and find people who are good enough. And therefore you can just continue expanding headcount and look like a bigger business than you actually are. Like, I have a very lean team of people who work the jobs that maybe 3 or 4 people could be working. And I think that that's what's allowed us to grow so fast and be so nimble, because we're all so focused on the journey that we're on. And my team genuinely treat the brand like it's their own. And that has just been, again, a massive unlock. And I'm just so grateful for the team that I've managed to assemble so far. And looking into the future, then yeah, I think that we have very high standards, and we have a few key values that people need to have. Me having not been to university and having not had any prior experience, when we're looking for someone to hire, by no means am I even asking for a CV. It's like, okay, let's sit down, let's have a chat. Like, what do you like? Do we get on? Do you have good values? And are you willing to get stuck into whatever I throw your way and really just make it your life and absorb yourself in it? My team send me texts of different things they've seen that we should try on like a Sunday evening. And I don't think that there's many employees which go to the lengths of that. So it's a very high bar, and my team have set a very high bar for my expectations for hiring in the future. But first and foremost, it comes down to who you are as a person and what your values are and what your absolute work ethic is. And I think that the skills come after that and can be taught, but that's something which is rooted or not in your DNA.
Gosh, I'm loving listening to this. Literally so many of my values align as well. One question I have to ask you, if you could give one piece of advice to young entrepreneurs 18-year-old Johnny, whoever it might be, what would it be?
A piece of advice. I think for me, then the piece of advice which is most true to me and the journey that I've been on is genuinely just really, really loving what you're working on. And there's a saying, I think, that, or maybe not a saying, it's a podcast from Eddie Hearn, which is called No Passion, No Point. And I think that really, really just hits the nail on the head, because a lot of the work that I do doesn't feel like work, and therefore it enables you to, one, have way more fun when you're doing it, and two, have much greater longevity when you're doing it. I never burn out because I never feel like I'm working. And there's never been a day where I've been like, oh my God, I have to wake up tomorrow and do this. It's always been, oh my God, I'm excited to get into the office, or I'm excited to work on X project. So just find something that you're really, really passionate about. And if you're not sure what you're passionate about, then go out and try things and find it. And the answer will find you, I think, quicker than most people would expect. But finding something that you really love and you're excited to work on, in my opinion, is the most important thing. And I think it sets you up for success in a way that I haven't seen anything else do.
So on the point of excitement and passion in your job, tell us about the China trip and the Hong Kong trip and how it came about, what happened. You obviously described you're too big for Europe, therefore you had to go to China. So explain what happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, we started talking to some manufacturers in China who had been referred to by a guy who works for a gummy company in the UK. I won't say his name in case his boss fires him. But we got introduced to a company over in China and had a few calls. And one thing which I've always made sure of is that a relationship over the phone or over Zoom or over WhatsApp is one thing, but a relationship once you've actually sat down with someone and had a meal or had a drink is just like, and Graham, I'm sure you know more than anyone else, you know, it's something where in the time which I've been in business, then it's very, very seldom, probably once a month, that I have an in-person meeting, which might sound crazy, but that is just the truth. So going and sitting down with this person that we were going to be in a serious business relationship with, you know, we're talking about huge, huge volumes of bags and orders over the course of the next 1, 3, 5 years. I wanted to go down and meet them, and being in China, it was 13 hours away. We decided that we were going to go for 3 days, and it was absolutely incredible. And it's something which I would recommend to anyone. I would recommend to everyone, but it's something which not everyone will get to experience, because not everyone gets to go out and meet manufacturers to start a business in China. But it was an experience like nothing I've ever been a part of before. And it was one of those where I went with three of my friends, one of which is on my team. And it was one of those where we were walking around and we were going, this genuinely feels like we're in a dream. And it was just the way in which they treat people who they're going into business with, and the culture and how much they're willing to give and immerse you in what's going on there. And the fact that you don't see anyone else who's from the West for days, and you're just immersed in this culture and the food and what everything looks like, and it's so different to the UK. And it was just the most amazing experience.
And they're all speaking English, no problem?
Not really, to be honest. It was because it was a manufacturing city, and it wasn't by any means a city where I think that they took. It wasn't a city where they had tourists there very often. Then we had a few people. We had a team that was showing us around from the manufacturing plant. So we had sort of 6 or 7 people who were with us the entire time and staying in the same hotels as us and all this kind of thing, who would then translate. But there were very few people who actually spoke English, which kind of made the whole experience more authentic, because it would be like, okay, the entire menu is in Chinese, like just choose what are your favorites and like we'll go with it. And I think I tried probably 60 different foods in 3 days and liked every single one of them. So that made it just that bit more authentic and so different to anything I'd ever experienced before was just absolutely crazy.
Fantastic. Well, Gito, do you enjoy that?
Oh, just so hyped. I mean, literally,
It was awesome.
Amazing
Yeah.
conversation. Phenomenal.
Now, obviously, the main reason for having you on the podcast is not just because you're an amazing entrepreneur, but the fact you are now a sponsor of the Live for Life podcast. So thank you, Johnny. And I have to ask you, sour watermelon or blue raspberry, which is your favourite?
It's the question 2024 I've heard. But for me, it's a blue raspberry.
I'm the
How
same.
about you guys?
What
Yeah,
about
I'm
you?
the same actually. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the OG.
And if you want to get your hands on a bag of Ovrload Creatine gummies, blue raspberry, probably after listening to this will be your first time, then please use code LiveForLife10, which will get you 10% off your orders. But Johnny, thank you so much for coming on the Live for Life podcast today.
No, it's been an
Hope you've
honour.
enjoyed yourself.
I have. It's been an honor. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Really, and this is the first time you've been on a podcast. So
It
apart
is.
from your own, where you had one episode, I think.
Yes.
But yeah, really appreciate it.
It's
Thanks
going to
very
be
much.
nuts in like 10 years' time where he's like Alex Hormozy level. We'll be the first to interview him. Yes! Thanks so much for listening, guys.
Thank you.